Some of the most expensive problems in a contact center start with a spreadsheet that everyone swears is right. I'm Justin Robbins, and this is a Metric Sherpa miniseries with the team at Datanitiv on what really happens between the plan is approved and why are our queues on fire. We'll pull apart real planning stories from the field and then show how the work changes when planners stop acting as human glue and start operating as true advisors to the business.
Hi everyone, and Justin, thank you so much for having us on this. My name is Mohit Shah. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO at Datanitiv.
Sunil, Varyani, co-founder and chief client officer at Datanitiv.
It's good to be together with the two of you. This is a topic that we've been talking about for a while now, and there's some other pieces that we're putting out, but I'd love to just get your perspective on some of the common questions that I'm hearing from contact center leaders. Candidly, just some things that I've seen as I've been digging into the data. And where I want to start, Sunil, I think I'll start with this first one with you. You chose to spend your career fixing contact center planning. I'm curious, what was it about that problem that you decided to commit to? And then Mohit, I'm going to have you actually answer that same question. What is it about this work that makes you want to show up every day?
When I was running large contact centers, some of the most intensive efforts we used to put across as a group was to look at long-term capacity planning on spreadsheets. We used to spend hours tweaking the formulas, looking at the output, a simple change of a scenario. Let's say our volume is going a little different direction, our shrinkage trends have changed, our attrition was running a little higher, we had to add a couple of new hire classes, and then we would wait while the capacity planners would work on their spreadsheets and be able to give us an accurate output. And this is a huge problem across all contact centers and GCCs, anywhere where long-term capacity planning is done with large workforces. And when we try to find an application or a tool or a platform which would help us automate this or make it easier, we found there was nothing in the market. And that is where the idea came about, that this is something we want to go and fix. And that was the genesis of the entire company which we built. Mohit, you want to add on something here?
Yeah, and Justin, the capacity planners that Sunil is mentioning that he was waiting on used to be part of my team, right? So he's right. We'll spend hours and hours, and typically outside of WFM, people rarely understand what complexity goes into creating a capacity plan. Because when you are in a business conversation and you are looking at scenarios and suddenly someone will chime in and say, you know what, if we change this particular KPI, let's see what it does to our projections. And when you translate that into hundreds and hundreds of capacity plans spread across the entire organization and trying to run that scenario on spreadsheets, it's a nightmare. When you ask any planning professional that how many scenarios you have to run for doing your budgeting exercise, they just simply hate that process because you are just maintaining so many different versions of budgets across hundreds of your capacity plans, trying to reconcile and also trying to give answer to the question that business will constantly ask, that what changed between scenario 1 to scenario 2, and now you have to go back to those 100 capacity files, do it manually. It's not fun, right? As Sunil mentioned, right, we've been thinking about it while we were working with contact centers and wondering why no one has taken a stab at it. Why is it so complex to create a fully integrated platform that will solve this for the planning community? And that's when we decided that, okay, we are going to be the first ones. We are going to build something unique. We will take a stab at it. And during the process, we learned why no one else built it, because it is very complex, right? And we learned it the hard way. We evolved and we are still evolving. We are still adding a lot more components to what we currently have. But yeah, that's been a fun journey that we've gone through.
I think it's important and meaningful context in the backstory that you've done this work, you've done the hard parts of it, and it's interesting. I bet a lot of people seeing this they've recognized gaps themselves, and it's like, why hasn't someone solved this problem? And as you said, you probably have the scars and the nightmares of, hey, this is what this actually takes to do it right. But I think it's cool for me to see something play out of this was your reality. It became a passion and a project that you've decided to pursue, and now years later you're getting to align with planners every day and help them navigate those challenges that you yourself once lived. So I think that's awesome. I'm curious, Mohit, maybe for you, was there a particular moment that was the last straw? Was it, hey, if I see one more plan that comes out like this, I'm done? What was maybe the catalyst moment to step out of operations and then finally make the decision to build this? What drove that decision?
I think it was not one instance. It accumulated over time, right? And reached a point and it aligned with what we were thinking back in the day that, okay, we want to build something unique, right? So the question was, what is that unique going to be? And this problem statement that stood in front of us so prominently, that there's this one area of workforce management which is so manual and so prone to inaccuracies and errors that nobody is paying attention to it. And it creates a ripple effect within the workforce management team. If one thing goes wrong, to fix it, to recover, the cycle can take up to 3 to 6 months. Imagine someone put in a value in a calculated field on a spreadsheet which has 300 rows. Nobody will know that there is a manual entry in one of these cells, because of which you are now short-staffed with 20 people. Now to hire, you need a 1 month of lead time from the recruitment team. Then there is a learning curve, training, nesting. And by the time they are fully optimized in terms of their productivity, you're already looking at 3 to 4 months of recovery time, right? And then while you're doing this, your existing agents are under pressure to take up that workload. So it becomes a vicious cycle, right? Because you are understaffed, your existing agents are constantly managing it. So there's a lot of additional shrinkage that you will start seeing from that end. And you're just trying to catch up all this while hoping that one day you'll be appropriately staffed. And that could take 4 months, 6 months, who knows, right? So I think it accumulated over time. And I saw this in multiple organizations I worked with, right? And nowhere I found a solution that perfectly fits the business realities. And that's when Sunil and I and our other co-founder, when we started talking about this, became an obvious choice for us to go after, and that's what we built.
Yeah. I had a particular moment running a healthcare administration organization, going 3x our headcount for open enrollment. There were multiple occasions where I could sense the exhaustion and resignation in our lead capacity planner's voice when I would tell him, we need to do one more scenario where I want to add 2 more new hire classes. I think it's important because I anticipate, my gut feel says our attrition is going to be higher in the first 2 weeks. We're hiring towards the end of the period. The talent pool is going to be pretty drained out. And as I would say this, the guy would, being the true professional he was, he would say, absolutely, we would get this done. But I could sense the exhaustion in his voice, saying that in a multi-skill environment, here we are adding 2 OE classes with variable nesting and learning curve times. And it's going to take me a little bit to build this out, and we're going to have yet another meeting. And why don't we just get to a decision? And you could sense it was not his fault. It was just our systems were so clunky on spreadsheets.
I think it's almost a sense of defeat. And I certainly hear that from planners. They feel like they're the only ones who have this problem, or that it's so complex that maybe there isn't a solution, or they're going to do everything they can to try to solve it and still not get there. I'm curious because the two of you have obviously been in a number of operations at this point and have gotten to see maybe the trend that others, if you're in the thick of it, don't realize. Are there maybe 3 signs that when you walk into an operation, it tells you that the state of planning is in trouble for them? Sunil, maybe we start with you. Anything that kind of rises to the top in common problems that you see?
I think you can notice this in conversations when you've got stakeholders involved, when you've got operations and related WFM organization, you've got the talent acquisition team, you've got the finance generalist also on the same conversation, and all of them are speaking about the same thing, but they've got their own flavors of concerns within them. Talent acquisition is talking about, you want how many classes and how soon, and why wasn't I told about this earlier? You've got the finance person saying that you want to add so many people, and where is the budget for that? And operation is saying, but you want me to hit 85% service level, and you want me to react to a forecast change just 2 months out. And that is one of the key factors which tells you that capacity planning is the culprit. or the lack of proper capacity planning is the reason why all these three stakeholders who should be marching in lockstep and absolutely nodding to each other's points because they were aware of it are not doing so. I think that's one of the biggest signs of a dysfunctional delivery organization.
Yeah, for me, whether am I walking into a nightmare or not are the three signs. One is, are all the capacity plans exact same format, structure or not? If they are not, then I know that everyone created their own version of a capacity plan with their own calculations, their own understanding. So that is going to be a big mess. The second one is how the assumptions are used. If I see 15% shrinkage for rest of the year, all the weeks, same number, I immediately know that nobody is using historical trends, seasonalities, holiday factors. They just used some number that came from a budget, and that's about it. It has nothing to do with the reality of the business. And the third one is how they interact with different departments to capture actuals accurately. I've seen people going on a call asking recruitment, okay, so how many agents did we hire for this class? And they'll say, oh, 15. Okay, someone will enter 15 number. How did we lose? How many we lost in production? Someone will say 4, they will enter that number. There's no validity of whether that number is accurate. Is it matching with what's on the HRIS system? These are some of the signs. The moment I see this, I know what I'm walking into, and the road ahead is not going to be an easy one to fix all of this. So for me, these are some of the things I usually used to dig into as soon as I started a role.
Yeah, and they're so common. I listened to both of you talk about you've got three people who are fundamentally talking about the same thing but using different language or describing it in different ways and not at all aligned or recognizing that they're all trying to do the same thing, or those kind of just disconnects between what we're doing in our processes, I think are all things that people can relate to, right? This isn't rare. This is stuff that lots of people are navigating every single day. But I'm curious, has there ever been a time where maybe you were meeting with a team or a planner and they actually felt that their process was really good, it was solid, and then you found, once you looked under the hood, that it wasn't the case? Has that ever happened? And if so, what do you think drove the disconnect? Sunil, maybe we start with you on that one.
I think what happens is that when you have spent a lot of time with the process you have created and made tiny tweaks, improving it, and the amount of effort you have put in, you think that's the pinnacle of how well it could work. And in this case, it is just, you don't know what you don't know, right? And we've seen multiple aha moments when we do our demo meetings with planners and when they start working on our environment in sandboxes, and then they compare their capacity, their spreadsheet plans to what they have created on our tool. They understand how integrations would work, how data would automatically flow in, how our shrinkage and attrition predictors give them more accurate projections of what their assumptions are going to be for upcoming weeks. There are plenty of aha moments. And it is just a question, they've spent too much time just doing what they've been doing. They've been tweaking their models, they've been fine-tuning them. But the inherent weakness of spreadsheet-based planning does not go away. All you've been doing is taking a building on a weak foundation and you have constantly beautified it with slicers and pivots and some fancy conditional formatting. The foundational basis is still very weak.
I think it's an important reminder that we don't know what we don't know, and we get just so familiar with our own way of working that it really does take an interruption to bring in a fresh perspective, to just help open our eyes, I think is maybe a good way to think of it, of what's actually playing out or what else could be.
Absolutely. And I can recall, and this is not too old, I think just a couple of years back, we were working with a client and their planning team felt that their capacity plans, which they built on spreadsheet, is the most accurate one. And they wanted to test the accuracy of our platform as part of the sandbox testing. So they built a capacity plan on our platform, and it turned out that their spreadsheet showed that they are overstaffed or appropriately staffed, while our tool showcased that they are actually understaffed. And when we went into the details, we realized that someone in front of a formula field added plus 15, thinking that they're going to get 15 people from another queue, which never happened. They forgot about it. No one changed it. And they realized that they're truly understaffed. But why they were so confident was because their service levels were in green. So we started digging more into it, and we realized that it's an enterprise queue. And because other partners in the enterprise were pulling in more volumes and they had more staffing, they were generating more revenue, balancing the enterprise service level. And these guys are thinking their service level is green. In reality, it was an enterprise service level. They had no control on the service level themselves. And that was an eye-opener for them when we started having these conversations with them, and they realized that they needed to fix their plans, and now they're our clients.
I think this raises an interesting question when you give that example, because in that case, you came into the organization and you helped them discover what was actually playing out. And I've heard you and the team talk about this as a capacity gap. If a leader wants to try to self-diagnose or find it for themselves, what are some of the things that it can feel or look like? Help make that capacity gap tangible for me if I'm a planner today.
Absolutely. I would say as a leader, any leader, they should look at the trends and the planning assumptions, right? So for example, if my planning team is constantly planning at, let's say, 1% weekly attrition, but my trend says that I'm running at 2%, then I'm not going to be accurate, right? There's something wrong there. I'm going to be short-staffed. Similarly for attrition, HD. So the place where a leader should go is try and check how they're trending for those planning assumptions versus what the planning team is using, because many times what happens is the planning teams are governed by how the budgeted numbers are set. Whether or not they meet the realities of your actual trends, they continue to plan based on the budgeted numbers. But if the budgeted numbers are nowhere closer to what your reality is, that's your first indication that your planning is off, way off. And I think that's what the leaders should question every single time they're meeting with the planning teams, that why are you planning at this number? Or at least get an indication that, okay, if I were to change my assumptions to what my reality is, then what my overstaffing or understaffing is going to be. So if the leaders can focus just on this component, that itself is going to give them a lot of insights into where they're headed.
Sunil, what's your take? What's something that leaders could maybe focus on if they want to understand and recognize the gap?
I think one of the other things they need to do is, based on the planning, look at the actual output of the week off, and then factor in all the variability of how the volume is coming in, how the schedule adherence is. Look how close you came to achieving your service level. Because there is a fair bit of variability on the day of delivery, right? Which always muddies this. And you can't do a direct correlation and say, this is exactly, I was supposed to hit 89.5, I came in at 89.2, and I can say, this is the exact reason. I think at that point, it comes down closer to predicting how the volume would have come in, how was our staffing on that day of, how close was it to the plan which we had put in place, and then factoring in what that variability of that day is, and getting a feel of, were we correctly planned or not, and is there a capacity gap or a variance. It cannot be really attributed to a single mathematical formula which would give you the answer, but at that point it becomes a little bit of an art rather than science. And we all know capacity planning and workforce planning has got a fair bit of art involved in it. It is not just science.
It's a good reminder. It's a necessary reminder. But also, you made me think of some research that I've done in past years, and it always surprised me the amount of contact centers that don't go back and review their forecast variance from what was in the plan to what was reality. And it's one of those little things that just that moment of reflection alone can help you start to recognize where that capacity gap might exist. So I love that you called that out. I'm curious, maybe we can pivot for a minute here, because you guys get to sit down with a lot of different planners, hear a lot of different stories, see a lot of different organizations. So, I'll start with you on this one, but talk to me about one planner that you've met that you won't forget, and what is it about them that sticks with you?
That's a tough one to pick from. But we work with some incredible planners across all the clients which we have. And the ones which, and I'm not going to pinpoint it to one person, but you can detect a certain kind of a planner, right? Who are extremely focused on learning how to do planning better. And we've run into so many of these in our initial engagements, and they became huge advocates of our capacity planning platform because they were able to spot the potential within it. They were able to understand how this could replace their spreadsheets. What were the pain points which were getting addressed? They were especially curious about the integration points and where there would be more accurate data flowing in. What is the planner effort being eliminated? And they were asking all the right questions. And look, these planners are also the ones who constantly came back to us and said, I've got an idea. Can we incorporate this enhancement or this feature within your capacity planning platform? And unlike a lot of organizations, we are extremely proud of the fact that we just released 1.32, right? That's 32 feature deployment releases in, let's say, 36 months in operation. So that's almost a release deployment every month or every 5 weeks or 6 weeks. And all of these features are crowdsourced from our community. We've got maybe 1,000 planners who are using us across all our organizations. And we have bi-weekly connects with them, if not more, where we elicit their feedback. They come back with what are they observing, where is it helping them, where are some of the features which need a little bit of tweaking, or there are new ideas which come in, and we incorporate them into our development cycle. Those are the planners we remember. And there are too many names, because we've got the WFM community of planners is a very passionate community. They are geeks and nerds in the purest form. They are extremely passionate. They love what they do. They are thrilled that they have an opportunity to contribute back. And that is where we get all the crowdsourced opportunities of enhancements.
It's a really cool example of compounding value as well. If we think about the origin of the company, in your case, was being a planner who you were facing these challenges, and now pulling this community of planners in to help continue to iterate and evolve that idea, I think, again, it unleashes a lot of really cool potential inside of a platform versus just having a developer's mindset. It's, hey, this is how I think and what I want to see inside of the roadmap. Really enabling them to be a big part of that, I think, is meaningful.
All our clients get the updated features. So when we do our monthly release cycles, and then we have awareness sessions and webinars internally with those companies, and we say that, hey, this is a new feature which has come in. And those guys said, that's very cool. We never thought of that. And some other planner sitting in the US is contributing towards the efficiency of a planner sitting in the Philippines in a totally different organization. Yeah. So it's a wonderful way the community is giving back to each other.
Yeah. And Justin, it's by design, right? The way we operate, even our first client that we started with in 2023, we still have bi-weekly meetings with them, right? So we constantly keep meeting our clients on a regular basis, and about 70% of our features that we build are all coming from these requirements or ideas coming from our client and the user base, and the remaining 30% is just part of our strategic roadmap in terms of what additional large features that we want to incorporate. But majority of our ideas are coming from the user community.
It's so good, and those frequent meetings that you're doing with them as well, I think also enables you to be really close to their success and understanding how are they leveraging this, what is their deployment, what's working, what needs to evolve, what needs to be improved. And again, I love the approach. I think it's, of course, having an impact on the clients that you're serving, and certainly set you up for success as clients who that level of attention and understanding and alignment, that if it matters to them, I think that is one of the things that can make you a really great partner. I want to maybe poke something for a moment, because I think most, if not all, planners I know have a love-hate relationship with spreadsheets. And I know some very big, sophisticated organizations that have some really robust technology, and yet that still meets its limitations, and they still have to leverage spreadsheets. And I know from our past conversations that that you both kind of feel that sentiment and can be a little hard on spreadsheets, but I think they are just a tool that people are trying to leverage. Talk to me, what's the real problem that you see with spreadsheets? What are they hiding that maybe leaders don't always see? Mohit, I'm gonna throw that to you first.
When you think about spreadsheets, why all the planners love spreadsheets, right? Because typically for most of the WFM users, as they're growing within the WFM discipline, spreadsheet is the first thing they all learn, right? And they have spent so many years learning this skill that they're so comfortable moving between spreadsheets, creating their own versions, writing calculations, linking sheets together, etc. So when a planner is working on these sheets together, they feel comfortable, but what they don't realize is that when you look at spreadsheet at scale for a large enterprise, it becomes unsustainable, right? You can't have hundreds of spreadsheets, or in actually few of our clients' cases, it's more than 1,000 spreadsheets. You can't sustain 1,000 spreadsheets in an organization managing the entire enterprise's capacity planning, right? Yes, for a planner, it's only 10, 15 spreadsheets, but when you compound it across the enterprise, it's huge, right? And that's the point we try to drive with the planning community. But at the same time, when we have conversations with these users, we keep asking them that, tell us one more thing for which you have to still go to the spreadsheets. What do you think is still missing in the product that forces you to build something outside of the platform onto a spreadsheet? Like, why do you have to go back to the spreadsheets? And that has led us to create so much of flexibility in our platform. So today we can proudly say that 95% of the use cases across any organization can be easily addressed by a plug and play system without any customization. There's always going to be a component of some customization, but 95% of the use cases. In fact, one of our clients, when they evaluated our platform, they had a list of, I'm trying to recall, Sunil, was it like 78 points?
Yeah, a lot of them. Yeah.
On which they evaluated our platform, and they realized that out of 78 points, 71 points were already addressed by the platform, and there were 3 more which were already part of our roadmap. So they were only left with 3 or 4 points which we did not have, and we added it to our roadmap, right? But we don't force it on the users. We try to understand that what is it, that one thing missing that is still forcing them to go back to the spreadsheet, because we do understand, and coming from that background ourselves, that how convenient it becomes when you're trying to do things on spreadsheet. While it is not scalable, it is still convenient and easy to use. And how can we make our platform in a similar way so that planners don't feel the need of going back to spreadsheets for any of the work that they're doing from a planning standpoint. So that's what we do. The other thing we realize that when people are building spreadsheets, there are hundreds and hundreds of rows and thousands of cells, and which is where it becomes difficult for the non-WFM users or leaders to understand what really went into the spreadsheet. And which is where, when we design the software in such a way that if you are a leader or a non-WFM user, there are certain areas you will go and find the information you need without having to go and dig deep into a spreadsheet kind of a setup, right? So that's how we have divided our product into different sections, so that if I'm a non-WFM user, I know where I need to go and find my information, while if I'm a WFM user, I know exactly what I need to work on.
One of the other things which Excel gurus love is that you can create your own formulas, right? That's the basis of it all. So you can keep playing around and you can create esoteric formulas just to reflect the numbers in a particular way. And what we have done is also build out a functionality called the dynamic formula builder, which allows selected people within an organization, just to keep it controlled, to be able to create formulas and publish that, if needed, into a particular capacity plan. There could be one capacity plan or a client requirement which is very unique, right? So we've given that functionality where you can build your own formula, get it incorporated into the data set also, which goes out, and enable that for a particular capacity plan. So whilst we have created a solution which is, let's say, 95% already built out, we've got hundreds and hundreds of calculated fields which you can select from and publish into your output section of a capacity plan. We have also been flexible enough to create a dynamic formula builder, which an admin or one of the senior people in the organization can control and build out a custom formula. So that's another great functionality which has been introduced.
Yeah, I think you bring up a lot of good points, both of you, in terms of these spreadsheets can be a bit of a maybe a comfort blanket for some planners. We understand, we're comfortable there, but I also think you bring up really good points in terms of what is the cost of that sprawl of hundreds or thousands of spreadsheets? What is the cognitive load of having to work through or navigate that, or especially if I'm not the person who's building and managing the spreadsheet and I need information from that. All of those costs, I think, can start to compound in real ways and are taxing our businesses, maybe in some ways that we haven't even quantified today. So I do think it is a good call out for people who are struggling with that. I'm curious, as we wind down this first conversation in this series, I'm going to throw a question. This first one, Sunil, I'll pose this one to you, and Mohit, I'll have a final question for you as we close. But Sunil, if you were to have somebody listening to this who is maybe a senior executive in a large contact center, what is one maybe uncomfortable truth about planning that you would want them to sit and have it linger in their mind?
I think that would be that you're not getting the full picture right now of your capacity planning process, right? I would go as far as saying that your capacity planning may be lying to you. It's not really showing you what truly is out there, what are the opportunities, what are the gaps. You need to be uncomfortable about some of the numbers which are being projected out. And that has always been, even after the best planning we would do in our earlier roles as contact center leaders, there was always a gap between planning and delivery. And we were always uncomfortable with that. We kept building in buffers. We kept recognizing the good work our capacity planners were doing. However, layering on an uncomfortable bias against that planning exercise and saying that, you know what, it looks good, I'm just going to add 2% buffer on it because I'm fine with the additional cost. I would rather absorb that cost and deliver on service level. And that was always a cost I was carrying. I was unconsciously always anticipating that whilst the planning process on spreadsheets was as best as it could be, there still could be a gap and I need to plan for it. I think senior leaders need to recognize that and also recognize that once they move to a fully integrated, standardized way of capacity planning on a platform over a couple of cycles, that goes away and you get comfortable that the numbers you're projecting out with updated shrinkage and attrition trends being factored in, with actual AHT coming in, with learning curves being built in, doing the whole process in a more scientific way, you're going to get closer to actual results at the end of that cycle.
I like it. It's good. Mohit, I'm going to close with this question to you. If I've been listening to this and I want to run maybe just a simple reality check, a quick alignment to see how well my confidence in my plan lines up with the reality that's playing out, what's one thing that I could do this month to just get a better sense of what's happening inside of my planning?
I would say do a simple exercise, right? Look at your assumptions and ask this question to yourself that, am I using flat assumptions across all my weeks for the rest of the year? Or am I actually looking at historical trends to bring the planning closer to the reality? If you're not planning based on the reality, then do a simple exercise. Maybe use just last 6 weeks of trends and use those actuals as your planning assumptions for the next 6 weeks and see what difference it makes to your staffing over-unders, and that is going to show you the reality of where you are in terms of your staffing. Is it over, under, or what the case may be? Because the worst thing that can happen from a planning standpoint is if you're only sticking to the budget, not worrying about your trends, and trying to answer the questions that your leaders are asking, that why did we miss service levels, or why do we have understaffing, why don't we have enough staff? And that's where I would say go and check immediately, see where your assumptions are, because that's the first thing that is very common across the board, where people usually tend to go wrong in their planning cycle.
Yeah, really good. I like it. We covered a lot of ground in this first conversation. A lot of our time was around what are some of the challenges, where are some of the places where we can start to see that there is this capacity gap between what we've gotten the plan and what's actually needed or what's playing out in our operations. When we jump into episode 2, I want to talk more about how can we as leaders then take that and drive meaningful change. We talked a little bit about your platform, but I do want to dig more on the impact that you are having inside of organizations. Sunil, Mohit, I've appreciated having this first conversation with you. I encourage all of you to join us back on our next episode where we look at how our planners can stop being the glue that's holding everything together.